At some point or another, I think every football fan has wondered just how teams like Manchester City comply with financial fair play regulations. Teams that have the financial backing of an entire oil-rich nation behind them, pumping billions of dollars into the club and financing transfer after transfer of player and coaching personnel. But if the leaks that have come to light are to be believed, teams like City haven't been complying at all. What's up? I'm Adrian and welcome to another Rabona TV explainer video, and in this one we'll be looking at the information that has come out from football leaks about how Manchester City have dodged financial fair play sanctions in order to stay within UEFA competitions. For the most part, information in this video has come by way of Der Spiegel once again. I'll add the link to the articles in the description. And let me also say that since the information provided is by way of leaked documents and emails, I want to stress that there is a big allegedly stamped on the entirety of this video. But again, football leaks thus far have a great track record, and it's important to note that Manchester City have not come out to deny the allegations made in the articles released by Der Spiegel as of the time of making this video, November 14th, 2018. Also, finances aren't really my realm of expertise, so I went over everything here with my girlfriend who's an auditor, so shout out to her for collaborating with me on this video. Alright, let's start with a quick synopsis of financial fair play regulations, or FFP for short. FFP was introduced during the 2013-14 season, in which clubs that were eligible to play in either the Champions League or the Europa League were obligated to allow UEFA to look at their financial records. Basically, clubs weren't allowed to operate on a deficit or on losses. From 2011 to 2013, they weren't allowed to have a deficit larger than 45 million euros, and 3 seasons following the 2013-14 season, they couldn't have a deficit totaling more than 30 million euros. So one thing that has to be noted about this is that in order to make a level playing ground for all teams and to, at least in theory, protect the UEFA competitions from becoming a buy a title scenario, the money that was contributed to the team from the owner itself had to be declared, which would be subtracted from their final budget, thus creating a deficit right off the bat. However, as you'll see from this video, the legal way of getting funding is by way of sponsorships. Now, you'll see the sneaky tricks that both Manchester City and PSG used in order to hide the funding from their ownership through sponsorship payments to avoid UEFA FFP sanctions. However, I won't be focusing on PSG in this video, mostly on Manchester City. I can do a PSG video later though, if there's an interest in that. And by the way, when I said legal in quotation marks earlier, it's because in regards to how City and PSG do it, it's a very dirty trick, but there's other teams that use sponsorships in a completely legal way. And of course, it would be helpful to have a quick synopsis of the ownership of Manchester City. The club has been owned by the City Football Group since around 2008, which is a holding company that is owned by the Abu Dhabi United Group. The man at the head of the Abu Dhabi United Group, Sheikh Mansour, who is the Deputy Prime Minister of the United Arab Emirates, or UAE, and a member of the royal family, a family that is estimated to be worth over $1 trillion. So, if you were looking at the ownership of City like a pyramid, Sheikh Mansour and his family are at the top, as he is the founder and owner of the Abu Dhabi United Group, who in turn owns the City Football Group, which is in charge of running the clubs that are owned or partially owned by the City Football Group. Manchester City, New York City FC, Melbourne City FC, Girona, etc. Just keep that ownership structure in mind going forward. Sheikh Mansour, Abu Dhabi United Group, City Football Group. In that order. So let's start at the end of the 2012-13 season, and what you'll be listening to is Manchester City's then Chief Financial Officer Jorge Chumillas writing to the financial team about how they can navigate a deficit in their budget, which would have caused problems for financial fair play rules. As per the Der Spiegel article, quote, "We will have a shortfall of £9.9 million in order to comply with the UEFA FFP this season. The deficit is due to RM, shorthand reference to Roberto Mancini, termination. I think that the only solution left would be an additional amount of AD, a shorthand reference to Abu Dhabi, sponsorship revenues that covers this gap." So, as you can see here, Manchester City has the benefit of basically being able to print money, so to speak. Most clubs, they have a budget set for the season and have to operate within that budget. If they report losses and spend more than they bring in, then they are in direct breach of financial fair play rules. But for City, as you can see from that internal email, wherever there may be a deficit, Football Leaks and Der Spiegel have alleged that they fill in said deficit with a little more money from their, quote, Abu Dhabi sponsorship revenues. Now, who are these Abu Dhabi sponsorship companies that you can see have been listed in the 2012 Manchester City investment report as, quote, supplement to Abu Dhabi partnership deals? Well, for one, there's the main sponsor of the team, Etihad Airways, an airline from Abu Dhabi whose chairman is Mohammed Mubarak Al Mazroui, the half-brother of City's Sheikh Mansour. Der Spiegel also notes in their article that the Abu Dhabi Tourism Authority and Etisalat, a telecommunications company, also advertise with City and also fall under the large umbrella of influence of Sheikh Mansour and his family. Whenever a financial hole needs to be filled, the funds can seemingly be siphoned from a variety of sources regarded as Abu Dhabi partnership deals internally in order to dodge the FFP sanctions. In fact, according to leaked emails that Der Spiegel acquired through football leaks, City have come up with a few different ways of dodging the FFP sanctions. As Der Spiegel claims, City Football Group board member Simon Pearce wrote in an email when discussing how they could dodge the sanctions, quote, we could do a backdated deal for the next 2 years, paid up front, end quote, while club CEO Ferran Soriano allegedly suggested, quote, having sponsors pay the team the contractually obligated bonus for winning the FA Cup, end quote. Though Der Spiegel notes that City hadn't won the FA Cup that year. So, from this 2012 example of how City operates financially, we can see that initially the supplement to Abu Dhabi partnership deals was listed at £149.5 million. But, following the termination of Roberto Mancini's contract in 2013 at the end of the season, there was a deficit at the end of the 2012-13 season, so from the deliberations that I just spoke of, they came to this conclusion according to Der Spiegel's article. Quote, Jumias, remember City's chief financial officer, presented the results of the deliberations and declared that the details of the sponsoring contracts would be adjusted. For the just finished season, Etihad was to suddenly pay £1.5 million more, Abar £0.5 million extra, and the Tourism Authority a surplus of fully £5.5 million. And everyone was supposed to act as though that had been the deal agreed to at the beginning of the season. The article continues saying that Jumias asked Pearce if they were able to change the date of payment from the sponsors, to which Pearce allegedly replied, quote, of course, we can do what we want. Now, this is a manipulation of earnings. Let's go over that. City created their budget at the beginning of the season. Then, when they had to pay out Mancini after terminating his contract, it created a deficit and would mean that their numbers would be in the negative and would cause them problems with financial fair play regulations. In order to avoid this when reporting their finances to UEFA, they then siphoned more money at the end of the season from their Abu Dhabi sponsors and changed the dates in which they received their additional payments, which were used to offset the deficit in order to make them seem like they had come from earlier in the season and weren't a so-called doctoring of their finances at the end of the season. Now, the article goes on to talk about a 2010 email from Pearce in which he talks about how the sponsorship from Abar will work, an Abu Dhabi petroleum investment company which is again chaired by Sheikh Mansour. As the article itself states, quote, according to the contract, the investment company was to pay the club £15 million annually, but that apparently isn't the full story. As we discussed, the annual direct obligations for Abar is £3 million, Pearce wrote. The remaining £12 million requirement will come from alternative sources provided by His Highness. With just a single sentence, Pearce confirmed the accusations that his club had repeatedly, indignantly rejected. Namely, that His Highness, Sheikh Mansour, paid a portion of the sponsoring money himself. End quote. Der Spiegel goes on to explain how this would directly conflict with the FFP rules, saying that when a team operates on money used by their owner, they must declare these expenditures, and due to FFP rules, this would then mean that the funds used from the owner's pocket would be considered a deficit right off the bat, which I had mentioned earlier when talking about the FFP rules at the beginning of the video. However, City dodges this by rerouting the money from Sheikh Mansour through the different companies that he has connections with or just directly owns. Apparently, according to the Der Spiegel article, the Sheikh wires the money to Etihad, Abar, and the Abu Dhabi Tourism Authority, and then they pump that money into City's finances. This is basically like laundering your money, trying to hide the source from which you really get your finances. City have categorically denied the allegations of hiding this paper trail in the past, but behind closed doors, if these emails are to be believed true, which again, Football Leaks has been pretty spot on in the past, and it's clear that they are breaching financial fair play rules. Now, there's even allegations that Gianni Infantino, who is now the head of FIFA but was at the time the UEFA General Secretary, had helped Manchester in preparation for their appearance in front of the investigative board of FFP by prepping them on what the board would say to them, what they could come to expect, and helping them to sort of negotiate a more favorable settlement between themselves and the FFP sanctions so that they could continue in the Champions League. But that's a whole other story that involves PSG as well that I can maybe save for another day. And so that's where things lay at this moment. As of now, UEFA have stated that they could reopen investigations from the past given the new information that has come to light. So this could just be the beginning of some tough legal battles between Manchester City, UEFA, and also PSG. If you want to ensure that you stay up to date, then just hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Other than that, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something today, and I'll see you in the next one. Later.